Noah Gragson is a lead candidate to replace Eric Almirola at Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024, and Corey Heim will return to Tricon Garage in 2024. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got to NASCAR and other motorsports story discusser today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start talking about Budweiser, as it was announced on Monday evening that Kevin Harvick will be running a Budweiser scheme at Homestead Miami Speedway. This is to commemorate Kevin Harvick's career and accomplishments that Kevin Harvick has done with Budweiser. He's had a loyal sponsorship with Kevin Harvick since 2011. This has been really cool to see. I love the paint scheme. They did an awesome and incredible job, and I cannot wait to see this out on the racetrack this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Rodney Childers and Mike Helton. As it was announced yesterday, Rodney Childers and Mike Helton will be dignitaries for this weekend's race at Homestead. Rodney Childers will give the command with his family, and Mike Helton will wave the green flag. This is really awesome and really cool to see. Rodney Childers, of course, been a legendary crew chief. He's worked Kevin Harvick since 2014. It's, of course, this race also be honoring Kevin Harvick with the Forever 400. It's really exciting stuff, and glad to see that both those people. And Pitbull's also going to be driving a pace car as well this weekend. So this is really awesome and really cool to see the partnership and them working together for this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ally and Hendrick cars. As it was reported yesterday on Monday by Adam Stern that ties between Ally and Hendrick seemed to get stronger last week when Ally CEO Jeff Brown left to become president of Hendrick cars. Obviously, Ally and Hendrick cars have been growing their partnership over the last year, and it's really cool to see the ties between both. There's been some conversation recently. Maybe we see some Ally schemes on Kyle Larson's cars going forward into the future. And it's really cool to see Hendrick cars continuing to grow their partnership, and even talked, maybe we'll see less paint schemes there. Nonetheless, this is a really awesome and really great partnership by Ally and Hendrick cars. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, Kyle Larson created and got an accomplishment this past weekend in Las Vegas. He became the first driver to lead 1,000 laps in 2023. He's also the first driver to do this in the next-gen car and in the next-gen era. Kyle Larson's had an incredible season and continues to rack up massive accomplishments. Won the High Limit Championship this past week, tested an IndyCar, and of course won this past weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He continues to rack up incredible and amazing accomplishments, and this is an awesome and pretty incredible accomplishment. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Robert Wickens. As Robert Wickens won the 2023 TCR Championship with Brian Herta Autosport. This is an awesome and incredible accomplishment for Robert Wickens. Obviously been driving with Brian Herta Autosport for the last few years since coming back. I think it's really incredible to see the story. If we all the story from 2018, we had his really bad and scary crash, the recovery, and to see him come back and win this TCR championship is amazing, incredible. He's won a lot of races, and for him to win the TCR championship is not only inspiring, but it's also absolutely incredible. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Petit Le Mans. Now, this past weekend was Petit Le Mans, and Shank Racing was able to win the 2023 Petit Le Mans. Now, the 31 Action Express Cadillac team is able to win the championship this past week, though they won in controversial fashion after getting into Wayne Taylor Racing when they tried to make a move to the outside of them going into turn number 1. But Shank Racing won. Obviously, we know Shank Racing is not returning to IMSA in the 2024 season, as Shank Racing will be focusing full-time on IndyCar in 2024. So it's really good to see this team end off on a really high note. Obviously, they won the Rolex 24 this year, but they got told they needed a legal part, and they had lost 200 points, and that's what cost them the championship, and they had an incredible recovery. Nonetheless, so massive and huge congratulations to Shank Racing on winning the 2023 Petit Le Mans. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Agustin Canapino. As it was announced earlier this morning that Agustin Canapino has signed a contract extension with Juncos Hollinger Racing to continue driving the number 78 car for Juncos Hollinger Racing in 2024. Agustin Canapino had an up and down year in IndyCar, made his full season debut, and I will have to say Agustin Canapino at times was extremely impressive. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of talk about his fan base. A lot of the Argentinian fan base in that team have been really frustrated with the way things have been going down, and with way that the fans kind of handle the situation, because Augustine Canapino has an extremely passionate fan base. But one thing I will say about Augustine Canapino, he is a very, very talented driver, and I think Augustine will have a much better year in 2024 than he did in 2023, because there was times where he showed major signs of improvement. The goal for Augustine Canapino going into 2024 is to do much better in 2024 than he did in 2023. If he can do that, I think he'll have a very, very solid and a pretty good year with this organization and with this team. Glad to see he's returning to the team, and hopefully he can do a really good job with Juncos Hollinger. The goal is to try to score as many top 10s as possible and be as competitive as possible with Juncos Hollinger. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brad Perez. As it was announced yesterday that Brad Perez will drive a 0-2 for Young's Motorsports this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Brad Perez, I believe, is from the Miami area, and this is an awesome thing to see that he'll be driving a 0-2 car for truck for this weekend. I don't know how many oval starts that Brad Perez has had before, but this is a really cool opportunity for Brad. Young's Motorsports, hopefully they have good enough trucks so they can make it in the field, and also this truck can make it home, because we've had a little bit of issues with reliability when it comes to Young's Motorsports equipment. So nonetheless, though, it's really awesome. Glad to see that Brad Perez is getting the opportunity and chance, and hopefully he can make the best out of it this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway, because he deserves a chance and an opportunity to compete. Glad to see, though, that he'll be driving a 0-2 for Young's Motorsports this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jeff Gordon. Now, I already talked about this, how Kyle Larson had won the NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And Jeff Gordon was interviewed in regards to Kyle Larson. And Jeff Gordon says that Kyle Larson is a better driver than him. And he continued on by saying that he said he can compete against a driver he considers better than him, that being Jimmy Johnson. He didn't want to compete against two drivers that were better than him. That is huge praise coming from Jeff Gordon. Obviously, Kyle Larson is a driver we've seen do incredible things, but Kyle Larson has been praised by a lot of different drivers and a lot of different people in this industry. He's been praised by Mario Andretti, Tony Stewart, and now Jeff Gordon. Even up-and-coming talents like Carson Osbar and Noah Gragson, and even Haley Deegan has praised Kyle Larson as well over the course of the last few years. It's because Kyle Larson has accomplished a lot. He has won 17 races since getting to Hendrick Motorsports, and overall, just all the accomplishments that Kyle Larson has had has been phenomenal and absolutely incredible. And it's just great to see that Kyle Larson continues to get the praise that I believe he deserves for everything that he has accomplished in this sport. This is awesome, this is incredible, and glad to see Kyle Larson getting the respect that he deserves. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Trevor Bayne. As it was announced yesterday that Trevor Bayne will drive the 25 for Rackley War Racing this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Trevor Bayne has made a couple starts in the Xfinity Series this year with Joe Gibbs Racing, driving the number 19 car. And Trevor Bayne has done overall a solid and decent job with JHR over the last couple of years. He drove around 8 or 9 races for them in the 18 car last year, had some good runs, and actually got a couple runner-up finishes as well. This year in 2023, it's not gone as well, unfortunately. It's not saying that Trevor Bayne is a good driver. So yeah, certainly is a very, very good driver, and Xfinity deserves to run full-time, but has had a couple not-so-good races, a couple races that he's crashed on and has made some mistakes on the track. But I do believe that Trevor Bayne will have a solid run this week, and Rackley Racing's has some decent pace and speed. They have improved this year with Matt DiBenedetto. Obviously, Matt DiBenedetto's not going to be back with the team next year in 2024, so they're trying to figure out who's going to get behind the wheel, and certainly Trevor Bayne has to for sure be a candidate for this team going into 2024. Nonetheless, glad to see that Trevor Bayne will get the opportunity, a chance. Hopefully he can make the best of it and have a good and overall solid run this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about John Hunter Nemechek. As it was announced on Monday that John Hunter Nemechek will drive the 42 for Legacy Motor Club this weekend at Homestead at Miami Speedway. Now, a lot of people are really, really confused, because Legacy Motor Club, while yes, they are switching to Toyota in 2024, they are still a Chevy organization. And a lot of people are confused because Carson Osbar was supposed to run the rest of the year in 2023. Well, a big reason why they're bringing John Hunter Nemechek in for this weekend is, one, it already announced that John Hunter will be driving a 42 car for Legacy Motor Club in 2024. Two, they got approval by Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing and other people in the Toyota camp to have this partnership, and Chevy and them all come agreement in terms to work together here. But number three, another big reason why this is going to end up happening is because Carson Osbar is still competing for the Truck Series Championship. And Carson Osbar has not locked up a spot in the Championship 4, though most likely he's going to lock up a spot into the Championship 4 with a good enough run, because of course this is the race to decide who get in the Championship 4. Carson Osbar is still expected to run the final 2 races of the year for Legacy Motor Club at Martinsville and Phoenix, so he should be back behind the wheel. I think it's a decent decision, actually a really good decision if you ask me, that they are going to do this, and hopefully we can see John Nemechek have a good run with the 42 team this weekend. So we'll see what happens. This car has been getting faster and faster. We've been seeing huge improvement from this team, and nonetheless glad to see him get an opportunity chance to drive with this organization. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Maya Sider. Now, Maya Sider was interviewed from FrenchStretch.com. It was in regards to his 2024 plans. According to what he said he's hoping to have an announcement soon for 2024, and he says he has announcements in the next few months. Maya Sider has been racing part-time with Joe Gibbs Racing this year in the number 19 car. Has had some solid and good runs with JGR. He actually did get a top 5 in the Daytona opener and did end up finishing in 11th this past weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I do believe that Maya Sider is making his final start of the 2023 season this upcoming weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. It's unclear who else will be driving the 19 car the rest of the year, but I think this is his last start of 2023. Now, the big question for Maya Sider is, where is he going to end up in 2024? Well, I think if there are a few options that are available for Maya Sider going into the 2024 season. He could go to Richard Schultz Racing and drive the 2 car. That is certainly an option. He has driven for Richard Schultz Racing in the past, drove for them full-time, I think, in 2021, and did get a win in that number 2 car at Homestead Miami Speedway. He also could go to a team like Jordan Anderson Racing, go back to them for 2022, but I'm not sure if he's going to end up there. It is going to be very interesting to see what happens in Maya Sider's career and where he's going to end up going into the future, but certainly I think his career in his future is a little bit uncertain going into the future at this current moment. So we'll see what happens in regards to Maya Sider and where he ends up going, but it sounds like at this point that his future right now is a little uncertain. He does want to run full-time in 2024, but I don't know if he's going to be full-time in the 2024 season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jake Garcia. As it was announced on Monday, he announced himself that he will not be returning to McAnally Hilgeman Racing in 2024, that being Jake Garcia. This is really, really unfortunate. Jake Garcia, in my opinion, has had a pretty solid and good year with McAnally Hilgeman Racing. While he did not make the playoffs this year in the Truck Series, I think he's still in the top 15 in the standings. And Jake Garcia has had some pretty solid and good runs. He's had a couple top 5s and has had quite a few top 10s this year as well. But there have also been times this year when he has been prone to making some mistakes out on the racetrack. So where does he end up going in 2024? Well, according to statement, he does have an opportunity that could be opened up in the near future. There are teams that are available for Jake Garcia, but I want to speculate about the future of McAnally Hilgeman Racing, what's going to happen with that team. We know that Daniel Dye, he's driving a 43 truck in 2024. Are they going to be a 2-truck team or a 3-truck team? My best guess is they still potentially could still be a 3-truck team in 2024. There certainly is possibility for maybe someone like a Matt DiBenedetto could go there next year. That could be an option going next year, as they do have sponsorship from Napa. There's also talk about Christian Eckes, about his future going into 2024. My best guess is Christian Eckes is going to return to the 19 truck, but will they be a 3-truck team? That is to be determined. The big question right now is what happens with Jake Garcia. I'm thinking there are some options available. You do have Spire Motorsports. One of their trucks is available, but the question right now is Nick Sanchez going to be brought into the organization, or is he going to stay with Rev Racing? And of course, is Chase Berg going to go to the team? That's a big question as well. And also there's been some talk about Roger Kroof maybe going to Spire Motorsports as well, but there is going to be a part-time entry next year or a rotation entry. But as for Jake Garcia, I think it's very interesting to see what happens and where he ends up going to in 2024. Trust me when I say this, I do believe that Jake Garcia does deserve to run full-time in NASCAR in 2024. I think he's had a solid runs. I think he's been pretty good this year. And nonetheless, hopefully Jake Garcia does get an opportunity and chance to continue driving with this team going into another organization going into foreseeable future. Hopefully Jake Garcia does find a ride for 2024. Needs another option, but I think that Shane Van Gisbergen is getting an opportunity to drive for them, and Matt Mills, of course, is going to drive the 42 truck full-time once again in 2024. Hopefully Jake Garcia, though, is able to find a ride for 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Blaney. Now, this has been a story that's been going on over the last couple of days. Initially on Sunday, it had been announced that Ryan Blaney had been disqualified after the NASCAR Cup Series race for a shock. But on Monday evening, it was announced and confirmed by NASCAR that the disqualification that Ryan Blaney had received has been rescinded. Now, the reason why this disqualification had been rescinded is because NASCAR had found something in their template that had been messed up, and then they went through their Monday debrief, and then they rechecked the part that had been originally the reason for Ryan Blaney's disqualification, and the penalty got rescinded, and NASCAR took full responsibility for the issue and said that they're going to go through and check their processes to make sure that this situation never ends up happening again. As for Ryan Blaney's original disqualification, it had dropped him 56 points below the cutoff line, but now Ryan Blaney is 17 points below. Now, I still think Ryan Blaney is in a very tough position going forward into the future. He still has 2 tracks where he's going to have to go up, and he's going to have really good runs if he wants to compete for a championship. Still, I think that is going to be a really tough and a tall order and a tall task going forward into the future. As for NASCAR, I'm glad that they did take responsibility for the mistake. They said that this is something they're going to check going forward, and hopefully they can resolve that issue. But NASCAR can't make mistakes like that. But I believe this is the first time that a disqualification has not even gone to appeals panel and it has been rescinded. Some have been theorizing that Team Penske paid off NASCAR. Some have said that they paid him off, which again, this always comes up every time situations like this happens. Trust me when I say this, I don't think that there's I don't think that they got paid off. I know that there was a fun beef between Ryan Blaney and Bubba Wallace on Twitter this past week, which, trust me, I don't think the beef is real. I think they're just joking around and shit in the bed at this point. I don't think they were just trolling each other. It was really, really funny. They're probably in the next room just giving each other crap. At this point, to me, I think that NASCAR needs to make sure these processes are absolutely correct or make sure that these issues don't happen again going forward into the future. And hopefully this issue does not happen again where we have disqualifications ending up getting rescinded. And hopefully this is something that does not happen once again going forward into the foreseeable future. But glad to see the NASCAR, if they know they made a mistake, and glad to see the NASCAR is taking responsibility for the mistake that they ended up making. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Las Vegas TV ratings. So Oscar Ensky from Motorsports Wire put out a tweet in regards to the Las Vegas TV ratings and the viewership. And according to him, the NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway earned 2.194 million viewers. That is down 16% from 2022, which received 2.619 million viewers. That is not very good. Now, the key demographic and the numbers were not released in his tweet. I would imagine those numbers are probably in the 16 to 17%, meaning that if that is true, that would be like 300 to 400,000 people that would tune in from that key demographic. Not very, very good. And having only a little over 2.1 million people tuning in is just not very good, especially when it's on a main network and when it is your race that is deciding the championship. Now, why are the TV ratings down for the last few weeks? Well, this is something that's been going on for the last few years. Every time we get to this point of the season, the TV ratings do, in fact, tend to go down. So what could be the issue and what could NASCAR do to resolve this problem? NASCAR does have a few options. Number one, they need to market the sport a lot better. I think that's a big problem. NASCAR's got a lot of sports they're going up against, the NFL, the NBA, among other things. NASCAR's been struggling to market over the last few years. They don't market their drivers and they don't market their superstars. There are superstars in the sport, but most people you ask, they don't know who Kyle Larson is. They don't know who Denny Hamlin is. They don't know who even William Byron is. And those guys are some of the best drivers in the sport. They don't know who those guys are. Because guys like Dale Jr., Tony Stewart, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Jeff Gordon have all retired, and Jimmy Johnson have all retired, and they recognize those guys. And you've got Kevin Harvick as a recognizable face who's retiring at the end of this season. Another big factor, I believe, is the playoff format. We always tend to see a huge drop in the ratings because of the playoff format. I think that there are changes that do need to come when it comes to the playoff format. I'm not saying you need to go fully back to Winston Cup format, though I do think like going to regular season format or full season format would definitely fix some of these issues. But I think if you're going to have a playoff format, the chase format is the way to go. It keeps people interested. With this current playoff format right now, you have a lot of drivers who have fan bases. They're going to stop watching. Chase Elliott's not in the playoffs. Bubba Wallace is not in the playoffs right now. Kyle Busch is no longer in the playoffs, and Ross Chastain is no longer in the playoffs. Right now, the guys who have in, the only ones that are recognizable are Ryan Blaney and Kyle Larson, are the only two people that have major fan bases right now. It's no disrespect to the fan bases of Denny Hamlin, Lamar Trick Jr., and even Christopher William Byron, but these guys are the only two that really have fan bases that are really tuning in. And if you don't have those guys tuning in, they're not going to tune in as much. If you had some sort of playoff system, if you got rid of the system we have right now, I think that would fix and resolve some of these issues in some of these problems. So it's going to be something important to watch going forward in the foreseeable future. I think it's a big story to continue to follow, and we'll see what happens in regards to the future. But NASCAR does need to figure out an issue to resolve some of these TV ratings issues, because this is absolutely a major issue and a major and massive problem. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Christian Eckes. As it was announced this morning that Christian Eckes will be returning to McAnally-Hilgeman Racing in 2024, driving the number 19 truck. There have been some talk and speculation recently that Christian Eckes could move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024 with Kaulig Racing, but it is really good to see that Christian Eckes is in fact returning to McAnally-Hilgeman Racing in the Truck Series in 2024. Because Christian Eckes has been really good in the Truck Series this year, scoring 3 wins up to this point. Those 3 wins coming this year at Kansas a couple weeks ago. He won at Darlington in May, and also, of course, won earlier this year at Atlanta Motor Speedway. The goal for Christian Eckes going into 2024, he is going to be expected to be a championship threat and a championship contender once again in 2024. The goal for next year is to win more races and once again contend for a championship. And again, it's really good to see him returning to this team, because he does have some loyal sponsorship and he does have some major funding as well that is backing him going into the 2024 season with Napa Auto Parts. Now, will we see Christian Eckes move him and make some select Xfinity Series starts in 2024? It is certainly possible. I wouldn't be surprised if Kaulig Racing does in fact have their third car once again that is an all-star car. I really think that he will be in that car. We also do have to remember, I believe Christian Eckes is only 22 years old, so Christian Eckes is still a young driver. And again, there's not a lot of really good rides that will get him to the Cup Series right now, or even the Xfinity Series that will get him the Cup Series right now. So that's why I think he's sticking in the Truck Series going into next year. Now, he's going to have some drivers we're going to talk about here in just a little bit that are there, because there's a lot of drivers have their rides confirmed for 2024. But like I said, when it comes to this, he's going to have less competition next year. You're not going to have Zane Smith next year in 2024. Zane Smith's moving up to the Cup Series to drive for Trackhouse Racing with Spire Motorsports. You've got Carson Osbar moving up full-time to the NASCAR Cup Series next year. He'll be driving the 77 car for Spire Motorsports. You've got Matt DiBenedetto potentially moving up to the Xfinity Series, but he also could return to the Truck Series as well. You've also got Haley Deegan moving up to the Xfinity Series next year in 2024 with AM Racing. They're, of course, going to likely have Ty Majeski next year to deal with in 2024, but there is less competition that he's going to have to deal with going into the 2024 season. Nonetheless, fantastic move and amazing to see that Christian Eckes is, in fact, returning to McAnally-Hilgeman Racing going into the 2024 season. This is well-deserved and glad to see. Nonetheless, he is for sure returning to McAnally in the 2024 season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Chicago Street Course. Now, I had done a video talking about this when the schedule was announced about a week and a half ago, or almost 2 weeks ago at this point, that the Chicago Street Course was in fact returning in 2024. Well, there's another report that came out that kind of begs to differ. According to a report from the Chicago Sun-Tribune, I believe, and Adam Stern had quoted this as well, according to them, Mayor Brandon Jones announced a new and improved deal with NASCAR last week to host the second street race event in downtown Chicago next July. But neither party has signed an agreement yet. One thing to remember and note is that a deal has to be signed, but I believe by January 6th or 7th, it has to be signed 180 days in advance. If a deal is signed, they cannot cut that agreement. Now, many in the industry do believe, and many in the Chicago area are still expecting that the Chicago Street Course will once again come back in 2024. I think the first event in 2023 did have some ups and downs. I think the event was saved by the fact that we got to see Shane Van Gisbergen pick up his first career victory, and I think the Cup Series race overall was solid and really, really good. But unfortunately, a lot of the outside stuff got affected. The Chainsmokers concert and the major concerts that were supposed to take place, unfortunately, ended up getting canceled. The Xfinity Series race didn't even get to halfway, and they had to basically call off the race like 5 laps from halfway, and they counted the win for handing it to Cole Custer. I think that there are things that they could do better for 2024, but also you have to remember one thing: a weather storm came into play, and that's not on NASCAR. Again, Chicago has a lot of different policies when it comes to their events than how NASCAR has their policies usually for their events. But again, we have a city event, so you have to kind of follow how the city goes with their events compared to how NASCAR does their events, which is why the event never ended up going through and why they ended up canceling the event overall, which is really unfortunate. A lot of things end up getting canceled, sadly, because of Chicago's policies, and that's one thing that they're going to have to work on going forward into 2024. Now, like I said, I do expect that the Chicago Street Race will be back in 2024. But the big question right now in regards to the Chicago Street event is, will it come back in 2025? There are big questions about that and legitimate questions about that. And a big reason for that is because some are speculating and believing that it may not come back in 2025. There was rumor that came, I think, from Garage Guy Chase, and apparently he's been told by sources that the Chicago Street Race will not return in 2025. And the rumor is that Chicago may, in fact, return in 2025. If the Chicago Street Course is gone in 25 and we see Chicago return, I would love to see that. The next-gen car race is amazing right now on intermediate tracks. And if Chicago, it comes back either in 2024 or 2025, I think the racing is going to be very, very good and really, really awesome if that does, in fact, end up happening. So we'll see what happens. I think Chicago Street Course will end up happening still in 2024, but it's interesting to hear this update and still no approval set at this point. They have until January 6th or 7th to get the deal approved. Trust me when I say this, I do think a deal is going to get improved. I know NASCAR is looking to do other street races. They try to get Montreal on the schedule. Technically, it is a street race, and I think it will get approved, but we'll see what happens in regards to that going in the future. But it sounds like there is still some speculation in regards to the street course, and if it is, in fact, going to come back in 2024. But it sounds like more than likely it will end up coming back. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story in today's episode as we're talking about the TV deal. Now, we have discussed a lot about this current TV deal that's expected to come in 2025 because currently the current deal we have goes from 2015 to 2024 where Fox and NBC broadcast all the races. And John Alwyn and Adam Stern put out their respective tweets in regards to the current TV deal. According to Adam Stern, back in the spring, sources said they expect new NASCAR deals by the middle of the summer. In the middle of the summer, they pushed the likely agreements to Labor Day. This week, executives did not want to hazard a guess, including even off the record. This is very, very interesting. Now, according to the article, it sounds like they're saying, do not panic. It still sounds like Fox and NBC are in the running to keep the NASCAR Cup Series for their races. Now, how many races are going to be on main broadcast, that is to be determined. If I were to be running it, I would have every single NBC and Fox race on the main broadcast networks. You reach a larger audience, and people are cutting cable at an alarming rate very quickly. So you need to find a way to bring those fans in, and it being so on main TV like NBC and Fox is the main way to go. But the other thing he's been talking about is a middle of summer streaming package. A lot of talk right now, discussion is a holdup right now is with whoever's going to get the streaming package. And currently right now, it does sound like that Amazon and Turner are the two main lead candidates when it comes to that at this particular moment. When it comes to the TV deal right now, my speculation is that the TV deal is going to end up going to Amazon. Amazon has been the front runner when it comes to the middle streaming package. Think about this. I know people have their opinions on streaming. I don't think NASCAR right now is in the position to go exclusively streaming. But streaming is growing in the United States. And is NASCAR's younger demographic going? They're going more to the exclusively streaming side. I think there are a lot of people who do watch NASCAR races, but they don't show up on the main forums because they go to streaming platforms and they use that. People are cutting cable at an alarming rate, but it's not cut to the point. But the younger demographic is going to more of the streaming side of things. And I think if they go to more of the streaming side of things, I think that you're going to be able to find a way to bring them in. And Amazon has, I think, over 110 to 120 million people who are going to that side of things. So I think that there is going to be a streaming side that is going to come in that foreseeable future. So I think that Amazon does come into play. Now, like I said, Amazon, I think, will come into play. Now, the other big thing is when is this TV deal going to end up getting done? I really don't know at this point, but they're gonna have to have this deal done. But the other thing to talk about is the media rights, because if they get the TV deal done, that would open up for the media rights negotiations. We know right now that they're trying to get more money, because again, with the TV deal, they're asking for a bigger sum, and it sounds like this is going to be the biggest TV deal that we have seen in NASCAR. I think right now the TV deal is for $8 billion. Some are speculating that the deal could end up going somewhere in the $10 to $12 billion range, which would be more money for the teams and for the drivers as well, because of the negotiations when it comes to that. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in regards to this TV deal. I think Amazon ends up winning the rights. I think more people will go there. Some are speculating what's going to happen to the Truck Series broadcast as well, which I think that there needs to be some talk conversations in regards to what the broadcasts are going to look like there. Nonetheless, it's very interesting to see what happens in regards to the TV deal, who ends up getting the rights, who ends up getting the negotiation win. It'll be very fun and interesting to see what happens in regards to that side of that TV deal and see who ends up winning the rights in regards to those sections. But nonetheless, I think it's very interesting. I do think the Amazon wins, and I think Fox and NBC, in fact, will be coming back in 2025 in the next TV deal. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about Corey Heim. As it was announced on Monday morning that Corey Heim will be returning to Tricon Garage in 2024, driving the number 11 truck once again in 2024. There have been some rumors and speculation about Corey Heim potentially moving up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024 and driving for either Sam Hunt Racing in a 24 or 26 cars, or even going to Joe Gibbs Racing's 20 or 18 car for 2024, because there's multiple rides in the Xfinity Series for Joe Gibbs Racing that are available, which we'll get back to Joe Gibbs Racing here in just a second. As for Corey Heim, though, returning to Tricon Garage in 2024, I think this is actually a really, really good decision. Corey Heim's had a very, very good season with Tricon Garage in the 2023 year, as Corey Heim has scored 3 wins in the 2024 season. Those wins coming at Martinsville, Mid-Ohio, and then, of course, at Bristol Motor Speedway, and also won the regular season championship despite missing a race at Gateway Worldwide Technology Raceway. As for Corey Heim's chance to win this year's championship, I think he's got a really great opportunity chance to win the championship this year in 2023. He might be the favorite currently at the moment. If I'm already focused and already locked in the championship for after winning at Bristol, I certainly think they got a truck ready and capable to win the championship. As for next year in 2024, the goal is to win more races and win another championship if he does, in fact, end up winning the championship in 2023. But I think that he is going to win at least 4 or 5 races next year, and the big reason is because he's not going to have as much competition. Like I mentioned with the Christian Eckes story, he's not going to have Zane Smith next year. Zane Smith moving up to the Cup Series in 2024 to drive the 78, most likely, for Spire Motorsports with a Trackhouse partnership. You've also got Carson Osbar, who is moving up to the NASCAR Trucks Cup Series as well, with Spire Motorsports in the number 77 car. You're going to not have Haley Deegan next year, and there's other drivers who could be moving up to Xfinity as well that are in this series. So that's the good news for Corey Heim, and I think he absolutely will become a major championship threat and a major championship contender in that truck. Now, the big question surrounds, we go now to Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity Series program, because you don't have Corey Heim going there next year, and you don't have Riley Herbst going back because he's staying with Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024. So who is going to drive for Joe Gibbs Racing's Xfinity program? Well, there are a couple drivers that could be available for this team. You have Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith, there's been some speculation recently that Chandler Smith's contract could get bought out from Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing, because he wants to have his contract bought out, because right now he has a 3-year deal with Kaulig Racing, but he's frustrated with the way things are going at Kaulig Racing. They're not going as smooth as they were hoping and planning. So they certainly would like to get that contract bought out, and they would potentially like to be moved away from that team and potentially go back to Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota. If he does, in fact, go to JGR next year, I think he certainly becomes a championship threat and contender right from the get-go and will win a lot of races. But he won't need to prove himself, because he could get kicked from Toyota. But there is a possibility that if he does, in fact, do well enough at Joe Gibbs Racing, maybe in the 20 car next year perhaps, that this could lead to a Cup Series ride. Mark Truex Jr. could retire at the end of 2024, and that could open up the 19 car or the 18 car for Chandler, but also John Hunter could get moved over, and that could move him into the Legacy Motor Club team. But right now, Toyota has a lot of great talent. You've got Bubba Wallace, you've got Kurt, you've got Tyler Reddick. Christopher Bell, Ty Gibbs right now at this moment. You've got John Hunter going Cup racing next year. Eric Jones. You've got Kurt Busch working with the team to try to help out. Carl Leversberger to maybe make a one-off start with the team recently. So there certainly is some major possibilities right there. And then you've got Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed has been really heavily linked to Joe Gibbs Racing, and that's the only ride that's better right now than an RCR ride. I think that he's going to end up there next year. He's got a little bit of sponsorship funding, but Sheldon Creed needs to prove himself next year. Sheldon Creed has been absolutely struggling. Well, not struggling per se, but compared to SEMA, he's been struggling. And he's going to need to step up to the plate because he still is winless in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and he needs to do a much better job going into, if he does go to Joe Gibbs Racing, he's going to be expected to be a championship threat and contender. But he's in the running, and I think he'll do a good enough job. The other driver is Ryan Truex. Ryan Truex has a part-time gig for sure for next year in 2024 with Mark Truex Jr. returning. But the big question surrounds, will there be a possibility of Ryan going full-time? He's trying to get sponsorship funding to run full-time. There could be 3 full-time cars and 1 all-star car. There's going to be an all-star car next year where John Nemechek, Ty Gibbs, and even William Sawalich, who's also in the running for a ride for 2025 as well at this point, and is going to run part-time with JGR next year once he turns 18 years old. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But going back to Corey Heim, he could go at the Cup maybe full-time in 2025. That is certainly possible. But nonetheless, great decision to see that Corey Heim is returning to Tricon Garage in the 2024 season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Noah Gragson. Now, we've talked about Noah Gragson quite a bit on this channel over the last week, and a big reason is because of his future in NASCAR. There's been a lot of chatter in regards who will be taking the 10 car in 2024, and Noah Gragson, according to Bob Pockers, not just on the Door Bumper Clear podcast, but also what he reported in his Business with Bob segment on the pre-race show with Fox, yet Noah Gragson is the lead candidate for the 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. Now, Cole Custer's name has also been linked and mentioned. It does change every single couple weeks, it seems like, according to Bob. But it does sound like that Noah Gragson is a front runner and a lead candidate for the 10 car currently at this particular moment. And the reason Noah Gragson is a lead candidate for the 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing for 2024 is because it's heavily rumored and talked about that at the end of the year, Eric Almirola is likely going to retire from the NASCAR Cup Series at the end of the 2023 season, opening up the 10 car, and Smithfield likely is going to be gone as well. There's been some chatter that Eric Almirola could return to the Xfinity Series in 2024, but it sounds like he also become a coach and a driver coach and do what Josh Wise is currently doing and might work with that going into 2024. So that would open up a 10 car. Now, a lot of people do think that Eric Almirola is not a good driver, which I completely disagree. Eric Almirola won an Xfinity Series race for RSS Racing, has had Stewart-Haas Racing equipment, but Eric Almirola historically has not been a good road course racer. And he went to Sonoma and won a road course race. That means that Eric Almirola does have some talent. And Eric Almirola, also remember, just a few years ago in 2018, he made the round of 8. The problem right now with Stewart-Haas Racing is not the drivers. The drivers they have right now are all very, very good. Eric Almirola, I think, is overall a solid driver. Ryan Preece, he drove for DGR last year before they became Tricon Garage, and he won a race at frickin' Nashville and didn't finish worse than, I think, 11th position in all the races that he ended up running. Chase Briscoe won 9 Xfinity Series races in 2020 in the Xfinity Series, has won a Cup race, made the round of 8 last year in 2022, and has faded back. And Kevin Harvick is one of the greatest all-time drivers. You got Josh Berry coming in, who's overall a very solid driver, which Dale Jr. did end up defending him this week. So it's not the drivers that are a problem, it's the cars at Stewart-Haas Racing. So that's the big issue that needs to be brought up there, is Stewart-Haas Racing and is in a very tight position. Now, if Noah Gragson does, in fact, end up going to Stewart-Haas Racing in the 2024 season, I am a little worried about Noah Gragson. Not because I don't think Noah Gragson can get it done. I'm just worried about his issues from this year. Not what happened on the track, but on the track. Noah Gragson has had a very bad year in 2023 in the Cup Series. Noah Gragson has only scored 2 top 20 finishes throughout the whole entire 2023 season. So he has not ran very, very good. And since Noah Gragson left, this is just the facts. Carson Ospar has had 4 top 20 finishes. Like I mentioned with Noah Gragson, he's only had 2 top 20 finishes. Now, I think that the 10 car is a little bit of an upgrade from Legacy Motor Club, but I think next year, Legacy Motor Club with the Toyota Sport that they are getting, they are going to be better than Stewart-Haas Racing. And I'm just worried that if Noah Gragson does end up, in fact, going over to Stewart-Haas Racing in the 2024 season, I'm just worried that things are going to go wrong and things are not going to work out for him. I'm worried that there's things going to go wrong and he's going to finish really, really bad because of the lack of confidence. I would prefer Noah Gragson being in the NASCAR Xfinity Series or going to a team like Colleague Racing. But there's been some people and some theories going around as of late. I don't know if these theories are true, but some people are theorizing that maybe, just maybe, the reason that Noah Gragson is going there is because Dale Jr. could be getting involved with Stewart-Haas Racing. Remember, Stewart-Haas Racing right now has a contract at this particular moment with Ford through 2024 where they have to run 4 cars. Maybe, just maybe in 2025, they're going to switch manufacturers and go to Chevy, and Dale Jr. could get involved that way. But there's also some people that believe that they are not going to do that because of the fact that they've stated recently that they want to bring their own team in and don't want to do what Jimmy Johnson is doing and get invested into a team. And maybe Noah Gragson's going there and getting out of the Chevy camp. But Stewart-Haas Racing, if they get Noah Gragson, it's interesting of second chances. But you think about Stewart-Haas Racing, they've had opportunities to pick up great drivers to bring into the team. Kyle Larson comes to mind. Kyle Larson has won 17 races since coming back to NASCAR in the last 3 years. I don't think he'd have that many wins without Hendrick, but he was potentially going to go to SHR in 2021, and Ford denied him. Kyle Busch was rumored at one point to be going to Stewart-Haas Racing, and of course, that had just been talked some rumors, but apparently Kyle Busch had talked to him, which right now I think Kyle Busch is in a much better position at RCR than he was with Stewart-Haas Racing. And then you think about Zane Smith. Zane Smith had been rumored to maybe be going there at this point, but Zane Smith is, of course, going to be in the Trackhouse family going forward. Ford has had a lot of blunders recently. They had a chance to get Michael McDowell. That kind of fell through, unfortunately. And they've had other drivers that they could have gone out and got in the future. And even Shane Van Gisbergen, I think, could have been a possibility as well. I think Ford's had quite a bit of blunders and a lot of issues. And overall, I think it's something that they got to resolve when not only comes from their talent, but they got to figure out what they're going to do long term. Because Noah Gragson, I think, is good. But Noah Gragson, I'd rather see a team like Colleague Racing. But sounds like Ty Dillon is most likely going to get that 16 car in 2024. He could have gone their Xfinity Series program and built his reputation up. But you got drivers like Matt DiBenedetto in the running for rides. You've got Shane Van Gisbergen to potentially be running some select starts of the team. You've got other drivers who are linked to that ride as well. And also AJ Allmendinger more than likely is returning to the Xfinity Series program. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens if Noah Gragson does in fact end up at Stewart-Haas Racing. But I'm going to be perfectly honest, if Noah Gragson does go to SHR, I think he's going to have some issues and some struggles in that car. So we'll see what happens in regards to if Noah Gragson does in fact head over to Stewart-Haas Racing next year, but there is a possibility of that happening. So that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on so if I win a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Links go below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. If Noah Gragson goes SHR, do you think he'll do well or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And more thoughts about all other stories to talk about today on the channel, including Corey Heim and Christian Eggers returning their respective teams, and the other stories, including the TV deal we talked about on the channel. We got a lot of great content dropping over the next few weeks. We got race picks dropping tomorrow. We've got the NASCAR news video most likely dropping Friday. If not, there will be his 2026 or 2025 silly season predictions dropping. And then on Saturday, we'll have the Xfinity Series and Truck Series race reviews from Homestead. And then Sunday, we'll have the NASCAR Cup Series race review from Homestead. We got a lot of great content dropping that I can't wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.